I'm hearing the term getting stuck very often in the golf swing, and typically I'll ask the students what they mean by that. And it's generally referring to what they're doing during the downswing as the club's approaching the ball. What I'm going to do today is we'll look at how the roll of the right arm can give the player the feeling of getting stuck. In subsequent videos we'll talk about what the body's role is and also what the left arm is, because the feels can be a little bit different, the causes can be a little bit different as well. But today we'll focus on what's happening with the right arm. If we look at both backswing and downswing movements, so as the club swings away from the ball, I'm looking for my club to move sort of toward the camera. Whoops, didn't mean to hit the ball. Looking for the club to move towards the camera. Now I've got a couple of checkpoints as I swing the club back. If I swing the club back and my hands move too close to my body, or my club moves behind my hands, or a combination of the two, then I can feel that my movement's quite restricted. So a couple of checkpoints for when you are swinging the club back. First, if we look at where the hands go, when my hands are, say, here, where the shaft of the club's parallel to the ground, if I drop a line from the back of my left hand, it's going to be just outside my toe line there. So if I swing the club back to here, and then from there, look at where the back of my hand is, you can see that it's just outside my toe line. Now, if I swing the club back and my hand is inside my toe line, then my arms are starting to move too much across my body, and that gives me the feeling of restriction in the backswing. A second checkpoint, and these are mainly looking at different ways at looking at the same thing. When I swing back to this same point, if I look at where my club head is here, it's either level with or just maybe marginally outside my hands here. What I'm looking to avoid is the club moving behind my hands, because again, that's going to give me the feeling of restriction because of what its effect is on my right arm, which I'll talk about in a moment. So second point, when I get back to here, is the back of my hand slightly outside my toe line, and is my club head in line with my hands or maybe marginally outside my hands? Now, the club head being marginally outside my hands does not mean my hands are moving away from my body as I go back. In fact, that's more likely to encourage the club to do that, which is arguably even worse. So that's the first part. The third checkpoint that I've got, and again, these are just different ways of looking at the same thing. When I swing the club back to here, the back of my hand's just outside my toe line, my head of the club's in line with or slightly outside my hands, and notice my upper right arm is pretty much vertical. So as I'm going back, my arm's not moving back this way. So those three checkpoints are critical for every shot you're playing. Now, the most common cause of really any of those three is pulling the club back with the right arm. So you can see as I'm moving the club away from the ball, my elbow is moving back this way, and my upper arm is now a long way from being vertical. Now, if we can look from front on, we can look at the same checkpoints, but we can also look at what we're going to do about it. So with that last one, where I was talking about my right elbow, if I move incorrectly, as I start back, my elbow is starting to point out behind me there, and that will bring the club in too close to my body. What I'm looking for instead, when I set myself up, my right elbow is pointed to my right hip, or I could have the same thing, I could just have the feeling that the front of my elbow is pointed out. As I begin my backswing, that right elbow should still point to my right hip. Now, if I don't move my hips at all, I've got to rotate my arm quite a bit to achieve that. But when I take into account the fact that my hips are rotating as well, that's actually pretty easy. There's almost no movement whatsoever. I'm hardly changing the form, with the first part of my backswing, I'm hardly changing the form of my arms and the club as I go back. So if we go back to that first point here, looking from the front, you can see my elbows pointed to my hip. Looking from the side, we've got my upper arm's vertical, and you can sort of probably see that my right elbow is pointed to my hip as well. this is not me tucking my right arm in. It's really just not changing the form at all. My right elbow is already bent, so it's not going to do anything other than just being moved by my upper body turn as I go back. As I continue back, if I'm moving back on that same line, then my hands will move up and away from my body. So that's the backswing movement for stopping that feeling of being stuck. So now if we have a look and turn our attention to the downswing movement, when the club swings down, a lot of players will try and pull their right arm down beside their body. Now when they do that, the right elbow now is beside my body, you can see here. When I move down more correctly, my right arm's moving a little bit more in front of my body. So if I was to pick that ball up and throw it sidearm with my right arm, my elbow would never move this way. Probably because we've been throwing since we're this big. But my right arm would in fact move more in front of my body. Now while the golf swing's not purely a throwing motion, it's very close. So my downswing motion from here, my arm will naturally move down in front of my body. Now as long as I don't let my arms get across here, in which case there's no way that I can move the club down correctly, and I will have that feeling of being stuck, then I'll try and make some sort of compensating move with my body. I'm in trouble. So we've got the backswing movement, just starting the club back with those 3 checkpoints that I mentioned earlier. Downswing, my arms are moving down in front of my body here. So it's just my arms just moving up and down across in front of my body. No tension through my arms, no jamming my arm against my side, it's just moving down and forward. Now provided I've achieved each of those checkpoints, I'll eliminate that feeling of being stuck in the downswing. It's going to make a massive difference to my shots. It will also mean that my body is not likely to make any other compensating moves as well to try and recover from that feeling of being stuck. So observe those checkpoints that I've mentioned, the 3 in the backswing and the feeling of how that right arm's moving in the downswing, and I'll guarantee you that'll improve your ball striking.